Hi, I'm sending this to your blog because I don't know where else to put it, and because the thing that keeps happening is tied to paperwork, not a ghost story. If you post it, please don't use our town name or the school name. I still work there. I teach kindergarten in a small town in Iowa. I've been there long enough that I can tell when a parent is just frustrated and when something is off. We have a pickup procedure that isn't fancy. A clipboard in the front office, a sheet for each day, a line for each student, and a rule that whoever picks up has to be on the approved list in the student file. If there's custody paperwork, it gets stapled in, and the approved list reflects it. The person picking up signs out, writes the time, shows identification if we don't recognize them, and the office staff signs too. It's boring. It's the kind of thing people roll their eyes at until it matters. That day mattered. It was late afternoon, close enough to dismissal that the hallways were already loud, and the office had that tense end-of-day feeling. We were doing the normal pack-up, backpacks, folders, checking each kid's tag. One of my students, I'll call her Lucy, was quiet all day in a way she usually wasn't. Not crying, just watching. She kept looking toward the door any time footsteps went by. A little before dismissal, the secretary came to my classroom door and said Lucy's dad was here early and wanted to take her. It wasn't unheard of. People have appointments, jobs, emergencies, but it was not on the calendar and there was nothing in her folder. I walked Lucy to the front office. The front office is small, just a counter, a couple chairs, a narrow hallway back to the principal's office, and that pickup clipboard that sits on a table nobody notices. Lucy's dad was standing at the counter. I recognized him, but only from conferences and from seeing him at drop-off a couple times. He was agitated in a way I can only describe as contained. Not yelling, not yet. He was tapping his hand on the counter, fast, like he was trying to stay in control. The secretary asked for his identification as a matter of procedure. He did the thing people do when they think a rule doesn't apply to them. He said he was her father, and it was ridiculous. She stayed polite, asked again. He slapped his wallet down on the counter and pushed it toward her like he was done with the conversation. Then she opened Lucy's file. I could see her face change. Not dramatic, but she went from routine to careful. She looked at me, then at the line on the sheet, then back at the file. She told him, still polite, that per the custody paperwork on file, Lucy could not be released to him without the mother's written consent, or unless it was the scheduled pickup day for him. She said if he wanted, he could call the mother and have her email or fax a note. She offered the office phone. He leaned forward and said something like, "No, she's not answering. I'm taking my kid." Not loud, but sharp enough that Lucy flinched and grabbed my hand. The secretary slid the clipboard toward him and asked him to sign the checkout log while she called the principal. She said it the way we're trained to say it, like it was the most normal thing in the world, because you're trying not to escalate. He did not sign. He did not even look at the log. He pushed it away with the side of his hand. He said, "You can't keep her from me." We said we weren't keeping her. We were following what was in the file, and that if there was a mistake, we needed to resolve it through the proper channels. That's when he started pacing in the little space between the counter and the chairs. He kept rubbing his hands together like he was trying to get something off his palms. He told Lucy, "Come on," and held his hand out to her. Lucy didn't move. She stood pressed against my leg. The principal came out from his office. He's a calm man, former coach, and he's good at de-escalation. He asked the dad to step into the hallway to talk privately. The dad refused. He kept looking past us toward the hallway that led to the classrooms. The principal asked again, then told the secretary to call the sheriff's office for a welfare check because the situation was escalating and a child was involved. In our county, the sheriff's office covers the town. They're not in the building, but they're close. The dad heard the word sheriff, and his face did something that scared me. He stopped pacing. He got still. He stared at the clipboard like it offended him. He said, "You're calling the cops on me for wanting my daughter?" The principal said it was standard when there's a custody dispute and someone is refusing to follow the checkout procedure. He said we were obligated. The dad laughed once, short and hard, then looked at Lucy like she had betrayed him. He told her, "Remember this." Then he turned to the secretary and said, "Fine, write down whatever you want." He left without signing. He left without taking Lucy. He walked out the front doors so fast the buzzer didn't catch him, and for a second the hallway was so quiet you could hear the fluorescent lights. The sheriff's deputy arrived after he was already gone. The deputy took a statement. We showed him the file and the custody order. We showed him the blank line on the checkout log where the dad's signature should have been. The deputy asked if he had threatened anyone. We said not directly, but that he was agitated and refusing procedure. The deputy said he'd go do a welfare check at the home address we had on file. Lucy stayed at school until her mother arrived at the normal dismissal time. She came in with her face already tight, like she had been crying in the car. She said Lucy's dad had been texting her all afternoon, getting more and more angry. She asked what happened, and we told her the plain facts. She thanked us for not releasing Lucy. That should have been the end of it. It would have been a scary story you tell in the teacher's lounge and then forget. But it didn't end. That night, I was making dinner and had the local news on in the background because I do that out of habit. The story came on about a domestic incident. They did not show anything graphic. It was the usual tight-lipped reporting. Deputies responded to a call, found 2 adults deceased in a home in our county, no threat to the public. Then they said the names. It was Lucy's parents. They said it was a murder-suicide. They said the child was not present. I sat down on my kitchen floor because my legs stopped working. I kept thinking of Lucy's dad saying, "Remember this," and I kept seeing his eyes go flat when he heard sheriff. The next day at school, we went into crisis mode the way schools do. District people, counselors, a meeting in the small conference room. We were told what we could say and what we couldn't. Lucy was with family. There were plans for support. The principal looked 10 years older. What I couldn't stop thinking about was the checkout log. It's a piece of paper. It's a list of names with a line next to each kid. We treat it like a gate. Sign here and you pass. Don't sign and you don't. We do it because the alternative is chaos. But in this case, the log line was like a hinge. A few days after, the secretary called me into the office. She looked like she hadn't slept. She had the clipboard in front of her, open to that day's sheet. She said, "Tell me I'm not losing my mind." On Lucy's line, where there should have been a blank space, there was writing. Not a signature, not a time, just words written in pen in neat block letters. It said, "Not present." I asked her if she wrote it. She said no. The principal didn't, the deputy didn't, I didn't. We wouldn't write that on an official form. If anything, we'd write, "Not picked up," or "Stayed until dismissal." But we don't annotate like that. She told me she noticed it when she was filing the sheet away with the rest of the week. She thought maybe she had written it absent-mindedly after the news broke, but she swore she hadn't. The principal took it seriously enough that he locked the original sheet in his file cabinet and made a copy for district records. He told us not to talk about it outside the office. I tried to be rational. People make mistakes. Someone could have written it during the confusion. But it bothered me because it didn't feel like a note. It felt like a statement. After that, I started paying attention to the logs in a way I never had before. I would glance at the clipboard when I walked by. I would check lines at the end of the day. I didn't tell anyone at first because it sounded insane. The pattern took a little while to become clear. Anytime there was a pickup conflict, not even a big one, just a disagreement about who was allowed, the log would end up with the same phrase in the child's line: not present. It didn't matter whether the kid was physically in the building. It didn't matter whether the kid left with the approved person later. If the conflict reached the point where someone refused to sign or someone demanded the child outside the procedure, the line would end up marked. Always in the same neat block letters. Always without anyone admitting to writing it. At first it was easy to dismiss because we're busy and paper moves through hands. Then it happened on a day when I was watching. A grandmother came in for a student who usually rode the bus. She wasn't on the list, and she got angry about it. Not violent, but loud enough that the other kids waiting in the office started to look scared. The secretary told her she needed the parent to call. The grandmother refused to sign the log and demanded the child. The principal stepped out. He asked her to lower her voice. She snapped at him. The secretary reached for the phone to call the parent. The grandmother stormed out without the child. I was standing by the table with the clipboard because I was waiting to sign out another kid for an early dentist appointment. I watched the secretary set the clipboard down, blank line still blank. She picked it up again less than a minute later, and the words were there. Not present. I said, "Did you just write that?" She looked at me like I'd accused her of stealing. She said, "No. What are you talking about?" I pointed. She went pale. We kept that sheet too. The principal called the district office again. They told him it sounded like stress and suggested he change the forms to something digital. He did eventually, but we still have the physical clipboard because parents like it and because the state guidelines are written around a paper log in our building. The phrase started showing up in other places. On the carbon copy receipt we sometimes give parents for early checkout. On the sticky notepad the secretary uses for callbacks. Once, on the back of a lunch menu in Lucy's old classroom cubby area, even though Lucy wasn't there anymore and that cubby should have been empty. Every time it showed up, it was after some kind of procedural refusal. A parent refusing to show identification. A step-parent insisting they didn't need to be on the list. A divorced couple arguing at the counter. Someone trying to rush past the office toward the hallway. And every time the response was the same. Sheriff called for a welfare check. If it rose to that level, report made, everyone tired, everyone trying to keep the kids calm. I want to be clear. I am not saying the log caused what happened to Lucy's family. I am saying the log started behaving like it was keeping score. And it started doing it after we used it as the reason to deny a pickup that day. I transferred to another classroom the next year, same building. I asked to not be the person walking kids to the office anymore. I couldn't handle the counter space, the clipboard, the way adults' voices change when they don't get their way. I still see the phrase. Last week, I was in the office after hours putting forms in student folders. The building was quiet, lights dimmed, just the hum of the copier and the secretary's desk lamp. The pickup clipboard was on the table because the secretary had forgotten to put it away. On the top sheet was the day's log. Most lines were filled normally, signatures, times, quick scribbles. There was one line in the middle, a student I don't know well. Next to their name, in the neat block letters, was not present. I asked the secretary the next morning what happened with that student. She said nothing happened. Normal pickup, no dispute, no refusal. When I told her what I saw, she didn't argue. She just opened the file cabinet and showed me a stack of sheets we've been saving, every one with that same phrase. She said the principal wants to shred them because they're not official records if they're being tampered with, and stuffing, but he can't bring himself to destroy them. She said, it's like it's deciding who counts. I don't have an explanation. I only have the mechanism. The pickup list, the checkout log, the refusal to sign, the call for a welfare check, and then that phrase showing up like a stamp. I keep thinking about the news report saying the child was not present, and how the words on the paper matched the words on the television, like the log was trying to align the record with the outcome. I also keep thinking about what happens the day it marks a kid not present, and they actually are present. We can't stop doing pickups. We can't stop documenting. We can't stop calling for welfare checks when a situation warrants it. The policy is the only thing between a calm handoff and an adult walking into a hallway full of children. But now the policy has a voice, or at least a way of writing, and it isn't asking us. If you've ever worked in a school, you know how many lists we keep. Attendance, lunch counts, bus rosters, pickup logs. We live by paper and forms because it's the only way to prove what happened. This one keeps trying to prove something else. If it happens again, if the phrase shows up on a line for a kid who is standing right in front of me, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. I don't know what the record is trying to prepare us for, or if it's already happening and we're the last to find out. I'm sending this because I want there to be a record somewhere outside that file cabinet, somewhere that isn't the school. If that sounds dramatic, fine. I used to think people were dramatic about paperwork, too. I keep a pen in my pocket now, and when I sign a child out for a dentist appointment or an early pickup, I watch the ink like it might change after I look away. So far, it only ever writes one thing: not present.